first point I want to make, or reiterate actually, is that the goal of all of our SDK objects and Agility Explorer, our main application, is to allow an enormous amount of latitude and efficiency when designing and or performing Macola processes. The SDK and the objects, when used in Visual Studio or any design environment for that matter, are great because you can pretty much start at an empty palette and design exactly what you want with any project that you want. So you have a lot of latitude using just the objects. But it's a lot of work and a lot of writing and debugging and could be time consuming. What I'm going to show you next is actually two of our main product, Agility Explorer, and our rapid development product that we offer called Agility Design Studio. And then I'm going to use this nice little tool that we have in Agility Explorer to kind of explain what Agility Explorer is and how it works. I opened these two with my little shortcuts, but the first thing I want to show you is where these are actually at. Bryce showed you these before. When you do a product update or a client update, we automatically create this folder locally on the computer. And in this bin folder, you're going to see the Agility executable here and the Design Studio executable here. This is a licensed product. This is a one-user automatic license for all users. So if you're SDK user only, you can come in and use this tool the same way that I'm using it here. The reason that I have this screen up, though, is to make a couple of definitions and to show you a few things and tell you how Agility is designed. What we just looked at were all the objects, and what I'm doing here is just like it says, I am viewing all Agility components. So everything that makes up all the menu options over on this side over here are going to be found somewhere over in this area over here, and it's going to define what that thing is, what type it is, and what project it's in. 2 points that I'll make in a little bit. The type is going to be a component. Agility Designer, when we get into it, I'll show you that. We use in our rapid development environment 18 different components that we wrap around objects to form the logic that you would use to perform a process. Right now what I'm looking at is 916 different things that we have built into Agility out of the box that have all the functionality that we would want to have as far as looking at different things. Some of these are graphs, some of them are process grids, some of them are dashboards. They're one of 18, like I said, different types of components that we use. If I look for OBJ objects, these are actually the objects within Agility. These are built into Agility. There's 166 objects that are built into Agility. These are the same objects that we just looked at in the SDK that you can make reference to, but these are already built into Agility. So it's what Agility is built around. So when I go and look at these, and we will look at them in a little bit in Designer, what you'll see is I'm making the same reference to the same DLLs that you're making reference to in the application that you're designing in some studio product. I have 166 different objects, and I have 900 and some different components. So it's about 700 and some components wrapped around 166 objects to give us the functionality that we have within Agility. What I'm going to do is just kind of show a couple things. First thing we're going to do is we're going to use this to identify how we kind of use this. And then I'm just going to show you how some out-of-the-box functionality and show you some latitude that we have as far as out-of-the-box functionality with Agility Explorer by just coming in and showing this PO receipt functionality here. If I was to look at that and I want to know where the PO receipt functionality is, there's the PO receipt object right there. And that is the same object that we're using, again, in Visual Studio to pull in as a reference and using that and then passing the parameters to it. However, this is built into our product or brought into our product as a component within our product, and we can call and use that to actually do the same thing. Again, I'll go in and show that in a little bit. But a couple points that I want to make about this screen. First is, after defining what we have here, 900 and some different components and 160 some different objects, The first thing I want to point out about all this and the organization of this is the project. Because everything that we have as far as things that happen over here in Agility, we organize those into projects. And in projects, we have components. So this Agility Searches projects has all of these grids in it. This IM Views project has all of these different components in it, and so forth. What I'm going to kind of do as an example here again, just to show how simply they work, is the PO receipt. I'm doing this right out of the box within Agility. I'm going to come down and I'm going to say that I have 3 different purchase orders that I want to receive. This is pretty high. This is a lot of latitude. I mean, really, for all practical purposes, if I do this in Macola, that's a receipt. You know, I go in and I have to do a receipt on that. I'm going to actually receive 300 of these things, and I'm just going to press the receive button. Wonderful. And if I go out and look and see what I just did, I just did a receipt on 3 purchase orders just by pointing to them on a grid and hitting a receipt button. That's pretty powerful, actually. That's, but again, like I said, as far as the latitude and what it gives you, as far as what Agility gives you, keep in mind we have 166 different objects. I just showed you one. So Agility, out of the box, contains all of these different things. What I'm going to show you next is how this is used in conjunction with the design environment to kind of show you what we were looking at there, what we just actually did. Again, like I said before, there's a project and there's components in a project. I just did a PO receipt. On the menu here, it's called PO receipts. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to look at PO receipts. And there is my object, which is in the WiSys object transaction folder. And here's the menu option that I have. It's a grid, a process grid, and it's in the PO views project. The reason I bring that up is when I come into the design environment, the rapid development environment here, what I have to open first is the project that I want to look at. So in this case, I'm going to show you the object over here. I'm going to open the objects, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to look at the PO receipt object. And I'm going to right click on it, I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to show that, again, like I said, lo and behold, this is the same DLL that you were pointing to, that you're making reference to in the Visual Studio product. If I'm going to refresh the class list, I'm doing a PO transaction receipt, and it's going to do a post transaction at the very end down here at the bottom. I don't know if I can pull my screen. There we go. All the object properties that are going to show up when we go in and look at this as far as object properties of what I have to pass to that DLL. So that object is the same object that you're using within Studio. Now what I'm going to do is going to open another project which contains the PO view that we did, and I'm going to look at it, and here's the PO receipt. And really, when you look at it and see what it does, it's nothing more than a list of all your POs with a button, some filters, and a button to do a receipt. And if I look at what that receipt is, it's nothing more than that PO transaction. So that's all I'm doing here is taking this and I'm passing these object properties. And if I look at what I'm doing here, I'm sending a doc date, an item number, a username, and using the view for the receive column, location. I'm sending all the pertinent things that I need to send as far as that receipt is concerned to that object, and then our environment with this button click will go out and perform that transaction. But again, the biggest thing I wanted to point out here is how many different things we have as far as objects and again, components within those objects right out of the box. As far as agility is concerned, all of the we have the inventory, the order processing, warehouse manager, purchase orders, and pick pack. All of these based around the objects, and again, the same objects that we're using in the studio environment, but we're using them more in our rapid development environment. What I'm going to do over here now, and something I'm going to make it's highly suggested. These are, when you come in here and look at these are the projects out of the box, and these are the projects that you will find if you come in here and look for some component that you're looking for that you might want to modify or change. These are the projects that are out of the box. If you're going to make a change, you can copy a component and you can create your own. It's suggested that you create your own and then you copy a component out of one of these projects. Components always have to have a unique name. You'll see that when I'm doing different things here, I have to have them listed in there. So basically what I'm saying is don't modify these out of the box projects, but open one of your own projects and then copy components to that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show a small project that I already created, and this is just going to kind of go exactly to what Bryce just did. What we're going to show here is how quickly you saw all the things that you'd have to type and do if you're going to do a transfer within Visual Studio. And again, if you're wrapping that around a process that you have to design, that's a very, very large latitude ability to have. But what I'm going to show here is how we can do that same transaction extremely fast within our rapid development environment. Again, like I said, if we look at the components, what I did here is I created my own new project. I went to, when I was in there, I said new project. I called it webinar. I was then able to come here and say new component and add the different components that I wanted. Well, I want to do a transfer, and I'm going to do that from a button on a grid. So I created a process grid first. And then and to do that, I mean, as simply as new component process grid, give it a name. I called it transfer. What I did is I made a quick query of some data that's here. I don't have any real filters on my data because I'm just going to pull it up as a list. And then I put a button on here that does a transfer. And adding the button was pretty simple. I'm just clicking to add a button and adding transfer. I'm defining it here as a transaction or report, and then down here under the transaction definition, I'm coming into the detail and I'm adding that same transaction again that we used when we used it in Visual Studio, except here I'm using it in our visual environment and it's been brought into our visual environment as an object, but I'm using this now to do a transfer, and my transfer is going to take the query that I have and it's going to list the location from the view. I'm actually going to be asked to enter the to location. I'm not going to put any comments in there or the customer, doc order number. I'm going to actually put the document date as a moving date with 0 days before today, which will be today. Vendor number, quantity, which is going to be a human input again. The username, which will be me. Item number, job number is going to be not applicable. And then I'm returning the transaction ID that I'm creating here to a variable to a return variable that's a number. And you'll see why I'm doing that in a bit. The next thing I'm going to do is the same thing that Bryce did, is I'm going to do an issue transfer. This time I'm just coming up here, I'm saying, when I do these things, I'm coming up here and saying add the transaction. Here's my list of transactions that I'm doing. I did the IM transfer in this case, or the IM transfer here, and I'm doing the IM issue here. When you drop them in, you can also move them up and down here, but I'm doing the transfer first. Then I'm doing that same issue that we were doing before. My return value is coming back. I'm filling in the pertinent fields that I need, and filling in my error value here. So I'm going to do my issue, which is going to take the same quantity. It's going to now move it that's going to issue it. And then I'm going to do the same thing basically that Bryce is doing here, except I'm using progression, so I'm not going to update an extra 8 field. I'm going to update a filler 4 field. But I'm really, when you look at this query, and that query has been brought into my project as a query, show you that query right now. If you look at the query is literally identical to what Bryce has in his code. I'm using the same variable names, everything else, which then are exposed to me or required of me when I come in here to do this transfer. When I do the transfer and I click that button, I'm required to fill in these 2 things. And where I'm getting these here is this is the issue transaction ID. And if you remember, I returned that as a number. So I'm going to take that issue transaction. I'm going to choose that right here. And my transfer transaction ID, that is actually going to be this one right here. And I'm going to save that. And I'm done, really. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run this same process that Bryce did. A little different, a little visual, a little more visual. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to check that item number, and I'm going to click my transfer button. It's going to ask me what my to location is. I'm going to put it to the one right below it, and I'm going to say I want to transfer 10. I'm going to say OK. And if I refresh this, what you'll see is I just transferred 10 from one area to the other area. And again, the same thing as Bryce did. What I now have is these 3 transactions here, and they are all literally tied together by this filler 004 field at the very end with this 6004. Now, this was the intent of this was to show basically a composite transaction to a transaction that's happening, and that's really what we have here. If you look at what we have, there's no commit statements. I'm flowing from one transaction to the next transaction to my last update statement. And when it's all done, it either works or it doesn't. If it doesn't, everything rolls back. If it does, then this is the result that we get. Again, last points that I really want to make is, again, that agility has over 160, like I said, objects built into it. That's what agility does. I mean, it gives you all these great capabilities of giving yourself these flexible ways of doing things that would take either a lot of time to do with code or a lot of time to do in Macola. You can come into each one of these things like I just showed with the receipt, and you can actually perform processes, and they happen extremely fast. It's the whole basis of our pick, pack, and the shipping, and all of our inventory management, all of our form management, all of those things. So again, but against what Bruce was saying at the beginning of the meeting with the IM, the OE, the PO, the POP, and the shop floor transaction stuff, you break that down, and if you looked at the titles of those things, you had about 6 to 12 things under each, 6 to 10 things under each. At 6, that's 60 objects. We have 166 objects. So it's a very, very powerful product out of the box, Agility Explorer, and with the combination of having Design Studio and rapid development and using the components that we have to, like I said, build the logic around a process, which really amounts to building it around those objects, then you have a very, very powerful tool with the ability to take things that you create over here and allow them to be used within your environment over here. I'll just show you real quick that I can take this transfer object that I just took here and I can copy it over to this. Now it's under customer service under transfers. If I come over here and relog back in, it will be under customer service and transfers, or reports and transfer. And that grid will be there, and that's what I can use. And it's really that simple to develop it and to put it out on the grid. You can then assign it to users. Last point I want to make is that all of this that we've pretty much discussed today is available on training videos. If you go to our web page here, it's the WiSys home, it's WiSys.com home video gallery. You can actually see and watch a number of our video training videos. You can come in here, and then you can always come down to the bottom, down at the bottom of the page. It'll always take you back to our YouTube channel. So if you want to watch the 75, maybe 100 videos that we have out there, there's a lot of information as to how to use Designer, how to use the development kits, and that type of stuff. Last point I want to make is about the 3.0 and 4.0 DLLs and objects that you're using. As of the 562 update, all of the objects that we have available to us that are in Agility here, so if I look again at objects, these have all been updated to the 4.0 or the 4.0 environment objects. If you've captured your own objects in your own projects and you did that 561 or previous, it's recommended to go in and verify the workings of it, and if nothing else, go in and update it to the new 4.1 applicable DLL.